talk will be about the journey to outcome-oriented teams. Probably this is a familiar topic for you so far because we had several talks mentioning the concept of outcome-oriented teams. So since we are in the United States, Colorado, I was thinking that I would like to share something which actually caught my attention. It's the road in one of the national parks, as far as I know, in Colorado, which is called Cottonwood Pass Road. You will ask me why I'm sharing this, but actually I wanted to put an analogy with this, when it comes to any kind of transformation with this road. If you probably notice, it's not straightforward at all. It's really winding road, and it's a road of continuous improvement. As well as any transformation is not about end state, it's about continuous improvement. So a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Nataliya. I'm originally from Ukraine, but currently live in Stockholm, Sweden. I work in a company called iZettle as a tech manager. Our mission is to help small and micro merchants across the world to succeed in the world of giants. Also, in my spare time, I'm co-organizing Go Agile Stockholm meetup in Stockholm, Sweden. Why organizational transformations usually fail? Do you have any suggestions about this question? Or based on your experience? Conway's law? Okay. Or opposite of Conway's law, right? Okay, thanks. Excuse me? Roles are not well defined? Goals. Okay, yeah, valid point as well. So, actually, we should never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. As George Carlin, American famous comic, once said. And actually, he will help me with my today's talk. So transformation itself is actually not that important. But what about solving real business problems instead? And in order you do the next transformation, or you will be involved in the next transformation in your company, think about actually the business problem you're trying to solve with that transformation. And of course, most of those transformation actually fails because of the complexity. And as you probably already heard about it several times, but this is the Scandinavian framework which was introduced by Dave Snowden, which is perfectly explains why most of the transformation actually fails. Because with trying to fix stuff, we try to fix the complex domains or complex problems in the domains. And as you can see, it's a huge part of this Scandinavian framework. And actually, many organizations struggling because they have a really complex domains and complex problems. So, and of course, most of the transformations also rely on the culture of organizations, which are very different, and typically there is no perfect answers to the questions, and especially management usually don't know all the answers, and you never know in the complex domain and environment what would be the effect of your actions or anticipated side effects of your actions. Again, there is another important tool to mention, which is called Westrom organizational culture, which was developed by the scientist Ron Westrom, and it was basically dividing organization to 3 types. One are power-oriented, another one are rule-oriented, and the third type is performance-oriented. So when we are talking about outcome-oriented teams and outcome-oriented organizations, it's mostly about performance-oriented organizations. As you can see, it's many factors which affects on which group of those cultures your company resists. For example, in performance-oriented, you probably should have high cooperation, risks are shared, failures leads to inquiry, and novelty is implemented as of the innovation itself. But it's 2019, and we still have the same challenges. It's management by fear, project plans and estimates, working in silos, and no time for experimentation or any kind of innovation. So how about focus on the customer success instead of focusing on the transformation success itself? So what would you do if you want to be focused as a customer success organization? I would recommend you to start with why. And here I wanted to share the story of the Stockholm-based company called Humble Brush. The idea of this company was originated from that people wanted to really be environment friendly and to use the less plastic in their day-to-day life and actually support eco-friendly sustainability efforts across the world. So they came up with the idea that if you, for example, need a brush, of course everyone needs a brush to brush our teeth, how we can stay healthy and at the same time don't bring many problems to the environment and actually be environment friendly. So how about introducing actually wooden brush instead of plastic brush? And this was innovation done by this company. And actually their logo and their actually why, like explaining the why and the mission of this company was that the toothbrush that will clean just as well and last just as long as regular plastic while being better for the environment. And everyone at some point wanted to buy this brush because they wanted to brush their teeth and stay eco-friendly. So this is an example of explaining why. So next thing is product strategy. How you can actually ensure that with your product strategy you are staying customer success oriented. And again, as George Carlin said, some people have no idea what they are doing and a lot of them are really good at it. And here I wanted to remind that there is a common term used in the actual United States Army, and it was introduced in the time of the Cold War, which is called VUCA world. And as you can see, it's basically trying to explain in how volatile, complex, uncertain, and ambiguity affects our day-to-day lives and how we do stuff and how we make decisions. And especially it's based on how much do we know the situation, how much uncertainty it is around the world when we do any kind of decisions. So, and because of this uncertainty and because you need to be flexible and you need to adapt to volatile and complex environment, you have to think about your product strategy as a hypothesis rather than a plan. So customer success focused organization is usually, unfortunately, in many companies, it's usually top-down or command and control organization, which means that probably all the product roadmap or product strategies are coming from the, actually not the customers, but instead from the management or the CEO or C-level management. And then, of course, customers are on the bottom of this pyramid because everything is built around the management, around the succeed of the C-level, of the actual investors, and around the business itself. But how about if we will turn around this pyramid and put the customers on top of it? That the customers' needs are really important, and the way we organize our team and organization is maybe highly related to the customers' needs instead of our leaders' needs. And the leaders at the same time might support those cross-functional teams or outcome-oriented teams with a vision or explaining why, exactly as in the Humble Brush example, and lead by example, actually. And then, how about the question, what's the outcome and what's the output? In 2 words, it's about value over features. And here I would like to provide my favorite example of the pizza delivery. So what is the output in this case? Usually you have different pizza delivery providers in the city, and all of them in the end deliver pizza, which is actually output. But when it comes to which pizza do you want, at which time of the day, do you need it hot or really maybe not that hot, or in the office or at home? This is all the specifics about delivery and how much you are satisfied with the overall delivery and the quality of the product is about outcome. So in essence, outcome is a pizza plus its delivery and how satisfied you are as a customer by the end of this process. And again, outcome-oriented teams usually experiment a lot. They start with an idea, and while doing verification of hypotheses and experimenting with hypotheses, sometimes it's okay if they fail and if they repeat, because experiments, in essence, provide fast feedback and should be inexpensive, ideally, of course, and should require no permission and should be easy to run. Another important thing about outcome-oriented organizations is that they have a freedom with responsibility. And here I want just to quote Sigmund Freud, who said that most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility. And most people are frightened, actually, of responsibility. And then, how about process which outcome-oriented teams are using? Usually, it's up to those teams to decide because by the end of the day, outcome is important, and the process which they chosen to succeed and to actually deliver this outcome is up to the team. This is one of the examples of the processes, which is called product discovery and delivery. In essence, it's a feedback loop, but big one, and it has a discovery part and delivery part, even though discovery is not the phase, it's rather the mindset. So you start with some signal from the market or idea or goal maybe coming from your existing customers, trying to put some hypotheses around those signals or problems you're trying to resolve, create some kind of backlog of those hypotheses with a problem, solution, and metrics. So basically, you're trying already think about what would be succeed metric for your hypothesis. And then you try to validate those by doing different kind of experiments. For example, it might be user interviews, prototyping, tech spikes, market research, or analytics. And then by doing this cycle several times, or maybe once, it doesn't matter really, you decide on actually the delivery part, which is already investing a lot of probably time of your developers and the teams actually to build a solution and to execute through build, measure, and learn cycle from famous one from the book. But again, discovery, it's rather not like once was said in the Dan Brown's Practical Design Discovery book. So design on paper looks like it's a phase in the development, but in reality, design is a mindset. So you can redesign things continuously, the same way you rewrite your code or you improve your quality in your code or in your product. So discovery is a mindset and not a phase, even though sometimes we used to think of the discovery or design as the first development part of the hypothesis-driven development. Again, so what's common for outcome-oriented teams? They have in common clear mission and goals. They should have all roles and skills needed to get job done, including product and design. They should drive their own priorities and processes and decide on their priorities and processes. And then, of course, it's about open and honest collaboration. And now you will ask how leaders actually can help organizations to become outcome-oriented. Well, it's several ways you can help. One of them is explain why and not how. It's about autonomy culture, and then it's about continuous learning cycles and a safe-to-fail environment. I will stop on each of them shortly. So when it comes to explaining why, not how, and not what, I would like to refer to the famous Simon Sinek so-called golden circle, which is in essence providing you providing you a framework which as a leader you can use to explain your teams why you are trying to achieve certain business goals. So you're basically explaining why and expect the team to figure out how and figure out what, because you're talking about outcome. And then, speaking about autonomy, imagine the situation that you got a task to actually cross the river, and you should do that as a team. Or maybe not the river, maybe ocean, as in this picture. So what would you do if you're in outcome-oriented teams and if you have, for example, very high autonomy and very low alignment in the organization? probably, as you see in this picture, you will be, like leaders will be helpless, and you will just got from leaders that they will hope that someone will actually work on this problem or cross the river. And again, another situation when you have actually very low alignment, a very low autonomy, probably you will see a lot of micromanagement in your organization. When leaders will try to say you exactly what you should do, where you should, with whom you should work, and how you should achieve that goal. And then another example is when you have a high alignment and low autonomy. So basically, leaders are exactly saying what you should do. You should build a bridge, probably, which probably will not help in the situation with an ocean, but still. And then with a high alignment, finally, and high autonomy, you will have just an outcome that we need to cross the river. And then it's up for us in the teams to actually define what and how we will achieve this outcome. Another thing which is important that you support as a leader in your organization is a continuous learning. This is actually a double cycle continuous learning framework. So a single cycle is when you actually, after you're doing some assumptions, doing actions on those assumptions and getting some results, you're trying to validate results by asking, can we do what we're doing better? But with a double cycle continuous learning, you're asking another question, which is, are we doing the right thing, actually? And it's very important here that you should be able to revisit your assumptions and not only results or actions. And finally, safe-to-fail environment. It's about understanding that you can't actually fix people, but you can fix systems and processes to better support them to make right choices. You can, of course, do that as a leader or in your organization by building so-called safe net, so that people in your organization can fail or can make mistakes without fear of having a safe net. And actually, we are full of fears. For example, as developers, we have a fear of making mistakes, introducing new bugs, fear even of pull requests, reviews, or comments, fear of fixing someone else's code, which is known as a legacy problem, and fear of deploying on Fridays sometimes, depending on your continuous delivery and integration situation. But what is an opposite of fear? And the opposite is psychological safety, which is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And this is a famous quote from Amy Edmondson. So it was a famous Google research done actually about psychological safety, and they was trying to answer the question, what makes a team successful in Google? And they figure out that there are several building blocks of successful teams, or what do they have in common. And first one, a foundational block, is actually about psychological safety, which means that team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. Also, psychological safety exists when you are not afraid to be yourself, raise problems, make mistakes, take risks, ask questions, and of course disagree. So some of the learnings, it's not easy and it's not comfortable to become outcome-oriented, but it's challenging. So outcome-oriented teams are those who are having direct contact with their customers, work on dedicated, fully cross-functional team, including design and product, experiment and not afraid to fail, focus on measurable outcome or result, and measure impact of outcome. What outcome-oriented teams do? Usually they use limit work in progress and optimize their processes and the flow. They map and regularly revisit assumptions. They release regularly and regularly refactor and manage technical debt as a part of their development process. So if you ask me what's the most important thought from my presentation today, or the most important slide, I would say this is it. It's about hypothesis-driven delivery, which is stating that we believe that building this feature for these people will achieve this outcome. We will know we're successful when we see this signal from the market. And those are some books, if you're interested to learn more on the topics which I shared in this talk. One of them is about how you can actually organize around outcomes. It's called Sense and Respond, written by Jeff Gottlieb and Josh Seiden. Another one, which is quite fresh from this year, it's from Esther Derby, talking about successful change management, or 7 rules of positive and productive change for your organization, and something about self-organization and how you can actually make the people choose what they want to work with and how to self-organize for outcome-oriented teams, which is called Creating Great Teams, and written by Sandy Mamuli and David Moole. So, what's your next experiment? Thank you. Questions?
So earlier you said that instead of being focused on process, you need to be focused on the outcome. Do you have any recommendations when your customer is more focused on process than outcome, on how to actually help them?
Could you please maybe repeat, because about customer part, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a customer that cares
Yes.
more about process than they care about outcome. So do you have any recommendation for, we're trying to make our team more outcome oriented, but that also means we need to help our customer also become outcome oriented. Do you have any recommendations for doing that?
Okay, thank you for your question. So it's about recommendations if a customer wants to be also outcome-oriented and wants to, if process means, like, it's important for customer as well, right?
The customer cares more about process than
Okay.
they do about outcome.
Yeah.
So we need to help change their mindset as well, not just ours.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Because probably, it depends, of course, which industry you are working, I would say. But most probably it would be weird if your customer is really knowing your process or they are really keen to affect your process. Because again, what's the important about outcome-oriented teams? That they have freedom with responsibility. And freedom in this sense means that they have a freedom to choose their own process, right? And by the end of the day, it's important also to emphasize for customer that there are some hypotheses, like be transparent, of course, this is our process, if they ask, but still show them that, you know, our outcome is measurable thing, and if you're having questions about how we achieve that, and if you have recommendations about our process, please, yeah, of course we accept them, but please take a look, if we are succeeding with our outcomes, do we actually have any metrics of success for our outcomes, and not only like for our process? Because by the end of the day, amount of story points we delivered, if, for example, we're using Scrum framework in one of the teams, it doesn't really matter anything for our customer. So I would say, yeah, you should be, of course, transparency is important, but still, your customer most probably shouldn't affect your process. It's up for the team to decide on which process they want to choose to achieve the goals or deliver the business value. So I hope I responded. Yeah.
I maybe continue a bit on this question. As I understand, you're probably consultant, and your question is about the customer as the one who hiring you, and they have mindset that the process is more important, right? So I guess the question is if someone cares about story points delivered per week or Jira tickets solved per month, how would you change that mindset? How would you explain them that being outcome-oriented is better?
Okay, so first of all, I would again refer to example of pizza delivery. And I mean, outcome is more important because, yeah, you can get the same pizza from different teams without processes or with some kind of process, right? But still, if this pizza is not that you was expecting, or it's not wasn't delivered on the time you was expecting to get this pizza, it doesn't matter. And yeah, I mean, it's really broad question, I would say, depending on the case, but still, if you want to be more transparent about your process, just do that. Be more transparent, but still explain to the customer that there is a certain way that Teams knows better which process they need to choose. Because if by the end of the day they are succeeding with their pizza delivery and customer is happy, it's up for the team to decide on how exactly they will deliver this pizza. So yeah, I hope I responded. Any more questions? Yes, I see there. Yeah.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I loved your presentation. It's really a very beautiful presentation with a lot of great thoughts. I love George Carlin, but that's not the reason I loved the presentation. It's outspoken in a nice way.
Thank you.
I have a question about the pyramid that you inverted for the customers first. I was wondering if it could work in an organization if it does not invert all the way up, basically. Like, could it succeed if the CEO or the second layer of managers empower their teams, but they're not empowered themselves? Mm-hmm. Or I guess that's not the ideal situation, but it's a smaller transformation scale at that point.
Okay. How it's so as far as I understood, I will try to rephrase the question. It's how instead of introducing this major change of reverting back to the customers is on the top of the pyramid, we can introduce something in between where we still have a top management and we have a customer in our mind, right? That's a great question. Actually, I would say it really depends on the organization itself. And I think the more techniques you are using when you're trying to prioritize certain features you are building, and the more you're doing, like more focusing the team effort on doing user interviews and doing research, not only relying on the opinion of, let's say, most paid person in the room, the more you will achieve this balance. But there is no black or white, of course. And I mean, there are certain techniques like user story mapping when you start with a user instead of you starting with a manager coming and saying exactly what we need to build. You can achieve that. And maybe actually we're using event storming as well. So it's about tools and how to coach organization to use those tools. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I was wondering if you had any suggestions for if I'm in a position of management and I want a team to move towards this, but they're maybe more on the micromanagement side. Are there techniques to give them more comfort with taking more risks? Is it maybe a level of maturity of them, or just like go whole hog and try to support them as best you can?
Yeah, it's a great question, thanks. So I would say if they are afraid, it would be nice to first understand why, or maybe try to run some root cause analysis, or try to do some retrospective together and try just to figure out why they are afraid to make certain choices for themselves. It might be some history in the organization, or it might be something wrong with how management perceive themselves. But on the other side, just introduce them this idea of experimentation and let them know that you built the safety net for them as a leader. And just choose what first experiment, try to make it simple and fast as much as you can and learn on it. Maybe even if you know already you have a gut feeling that you will fail, it's still worth trying because you will learn together with the team how to fail fast and how to actually, learn on it. So I would say choose experiment, run it, fail or succeed, depends on the experiment, of course, and then learn on it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your talk. What kind of skill sets do you see on a successful cross-functional team?
Skills as of the group of the people, or
Yeah,
skills
like
of the...
strictly engineers. Is it nice to have domain experts embedded with the team? Like where those lines usually land?
Okay. Yeah, actually, great question, because I think this is a proper conference to ask those questions. And when we're talking about practices like domain-driven design, it helps actually to narrow this gap between engineers and product and business. So I would say if you have a basic skills of running this event storming, or like running the session where you try to identify your ubiquitous language, try to identify your business problem first and what you're trying to achieve, that would be a great skill set if your team have it. Also, it might be that engineers are not really having this mindset that discovery is also part of the overall product development cycle. And sometimes it's not clear that it's okay to actually invite your developers to the user's interview, to the discovery phase of your development cycle, or to hypothesis, actually. So this is what we actually did in one of my companies as well, where I worked with. We actually introduced developers to the concept of user interviews and invited them so that they see this connection between the end customer and what we're building in the team. So I would say it's different techniques, but it's certainly we should be more open and not to be really working in the silos when it comes to our competences. Mm-hmm. It's awkward silence. Should we put more George Carlin jokes meanwhile? So I guess then thank you, right? Mm-hmm. Thanks.